Hi everybody, this is Michael Jeffries, and today we're going to take another look at one of my games. This game was played in 2006 at the Santa Monica Bay Chess Club. My opponent was Mr. Jack O'Donnell, rated 1726, and I was 1721 at the time. The game control was game in 25, so it was a rapid play game, 25 minutes for all your moves. I was white, and I began with pawn to d4, queen's pawn opening. My opponent played pawn to d5, and then I played bishop to g5, the Trompowsky Attack. As Julian Hodgson would say, what a move. My opponent played kind of an unusual move here. I don't see this very often, knight to c6, but it's playable. I just play pawn to e3, preparing to develop my light square bishop. My opponent played bishop to f5, and he's kind of got some threats, it looks like, on c2. But it turns out here I played a conservative move. I played c3 here, but I actually didn't need to. A better move here would have been c4, just going right for black, and this is not playable. Knight b4 threatening knight c2 check, winning the rook in the corner, fails to queen a4 check, and now the knight's under attack. It has to go back, and then I can just develop with knight c3, and white just gets a good game. So that would have been better. But instead, I just played conservatively, just pawn to c3. My opponent played h5, setting up the very famous trap Noah's Ark, and it has to do with trapping this bishop on g5. For instance, if you just make a normal developing move, let's say bishop to b5, then black hits you with f6, the bishop has to drop back, let's say to f4, and then g5 attacks the bishop, g3 is the only square, and then bang, Noah's Ark, the door shuts on your bishop and it's trapped. So I didn't want to fall for this, so because of that, after h5, I just played pawn to h3, and now I have a little retreat square. I can go to f4 and then back to h2 or g3 as need be. So I played h3. My opponent played queen d7, telling me he's probably going to castle queenside. And I played knight f3, developing. My opponent played pawn to f6, attacking my bishop, dropped it back to f4. He played e6, and I played bishop b5, pinning the knight to the queen. Then he played his other knight out to e7, and I played my knight out to d2, and my opponent played g5, attacking the bishop, which dropped back to g3, and then my opponent played a6, attacking the bishop on b5, which I did not move. Instead, I took advantage of the pin on the pawn, for if pawn takes bishop, then I have queen takes rook. So my opponent just castled. And now you have to look at the sacrifice, which I did for a couple minutes during the game to see if bishop takes a6 works. But I quickly concluded that after bishop takes a6, pawn takes a6, queen takes a6 check, king b8 only move, I didn't really have anything here. If I play knight b3, black just simply plays knight to c8, and if you notice, I can't really bring my knight into the game because if I play it here, he's got bishop takes, and if I play it here, he's got knight takes, and if I go queen check here, then he has knight here blocking to b6, and I really don't have anything. So I decided that I didn't want to go in for that. Now the computer found kind of an interesting line, which computers do. After castles, the computer likes knight to b3, amazingly, and if pawn takes bishop, queen a8 check, knight b8 only move blocking, and now knight a5, a very strong move, threatening queen takes b7 checkmate. And there's different ways for black to go wrong here. For instance, if pawn up, defending the square would not be so hot because it has a very nice retort, just queen takes knight mate. So that would not be so good for black. And the only other move that he can really play is moving the rook to e8 to make a square for the king. And now queen takes b7, king over, queen takes knight on b8, check, block with something, let's say the knight, and white's doing very well here. White's up a pawn, black can't castle, and this would have been a nice variation to play, but it's a computer variation, and I just didn't see knight b3. So in the game, I just, after castle, I just retreated my bishop back to e2, very logical move, and my opponent played king b8, and I wanted to play b4 here. Unfortunately, b4 had a tactical problem. Do you see it? Yeah, knight takes d4, exclamation mark. The idea is that my queen's hanging on a4, and if I go queen takes d7, black doesn't recapture my queen right away, but plays the intermezzo, knight takes knight on f3 check. And after retaking, let's say knight takes back, then rook takes d7, and I've just dropped a pawn. So luckily I saw that and didn't play b4, and instead I just developed my knight to b3, and my opponent played knight back to c8. I brought my knight into c5, attacking black's queen. He took, bishop takes knight, recaptured with my pawn, and then he played e5. And black is probably slightly better here because of his center. He's got a nice center with pawns on f6, e5, and d5. Here I played castle, putting my rook opposite the queen, which moved to e6, just getting out of the way of my rook on d1. And now I decided to double my rooks, rook d2. My opponent played knight to c7, the b8 knight. I played rook hd1, doubling, and my opponent tucked his king in the corner with king a7. And now gotta attack, b4. That was the only move I could see that really put pressure on black's position. Pawn to b4. And he played knight back to b8, and so I've just kept attacking. Pawn to b5. Want to get at that black king at all costs. My opponent played rook to c8, and now I swung my rook over to b2 and started to bring my pieces over towards black's king. He played g4, attacking my knight on f3, which moved to h4, attacking his bishop. He played pawn takes pawn, and I wanted to get rid of that light square bishop, so I played knight takes bishop on f5. He recaptured with his knight, and then I played pawn takes h3. He played pawn to d4, and that's actually a mistake. I took it with e takes d4 in the game, but there's actually kind of a funny computer line that computer likes here pawn takes a6 with the idea that after knight takes a6, then you play bishop to c4, attacking the queen. And let's say black moves his queen maybe to c6 because he wants to trade queens. You just take it. Queen takes queen, and after b takes back, then you play pawn takes d4. And if black recaptures, then it's game over with this shot. Bishop takes a6, king takes a6, and now rook d3 threatens an unstoppable checkmate with rook a3 mate. Very nice variation and very computer-like. So instead, during the game, I just played the natural move. After d4, just recaptured with a pawn. He played knight takes bishop on g3. I took back with my pawn. He played pawn takes on d4, and I recaptured c takes d4. And now my king is pretty open, but his king's also under a lot of pressure here. And he played his rook on c to d8, and I played pawn takes pawn on a6. He plays knight takes, and now I was a little bit worried about this check on e3, and I should have really played rook d3. That's the best move, covering the e3 square and bringing the rook over, threatening to bring it to a3 with an attack. But instead, I just moved my king over to b1, and he played a bad move. Queen takes h3, double question mark. Do you see the winning move for white here? Take a second, white to move and win. Yes. Rook takes b7, exclamation mark, and that's the move I played in the game, and I had less than 2 minutes on my clock, and I was very, very happy to play this. My opponent was very unhappy, started shaking his head because he saw that he was in trouble. He took the rook, and now it's white to move and win. I have a forced checkmate here. I actually didn't play the fastest mate. The fastest mate here for white is, do you see it? Yeah, pawn to c6 would have ended things very quickly. And he's only got really 2 good moves here. Almost doesn't matter what he plays. If he goes, for instance, king b8, I have queen check on b5, king a7, queen mate on b7. And if he goes to, let's say he goes to a7 after the c6 check, then I have queen takes knight on a6, king b8, and queen b7 checkmate. However, the mate that I actually saw a line which was longer, but you know how it is when you're under time pressure and you see a winning move, then you just play what you saw. The move I saw was queen takes a6 check, king back, and now I played c6, threatening mate on b7, and I saw that he had a defense, queen c8, but then I had an answer which was check, queen b5 check, king over, and now rook d3 and checkmate on a3, and my opponent very unhappily resigned here because there's no stopping mate. He can try to play queen over, but I just check, queen blocks, and then queen b7 mate. And that was my game against Jack O'Donnell.